Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you this afternoon to kick off the 23-24 season of the National High School Ethics Bowl. I'm Dr. Alex Richardson. I'm the director of the program, and I'm happy to share with you several announcements as we begin our year together. First, this time of year, I often find myself reflecting pretty hard on what it is that we do every day. There's a lot of moving pieces that go into organizing a full season of a truly national activity like ours. And my team and I work with very many people and groups to make that happen. You'll be hearing from some of these folks shortly with a variety of announcements, but the thing that sticks with me through our launch process each year is how crucial the work you're all doing is. The skills and dispositions that our program works to develop are really more important than ever. High school students aren't just the distant future inheritors of a democratic society. They're on the ground right now, learning to navigate their communities and society with care and consideration. Done well, the National High School Ethics Bowl is an ideal venue for students to talk over really tough issues, learn a bit along the way, and ideally have a little fun in the process. So I'm really excited to kick things off today, and I look forward to seeing what students bring to the table this year, a year which I hope will be our biggest and best yet. So on to a few announcements. First, and as usual, as you've all been waiting for, registration for participating teams is now open on NHSEB.org, alongside the release of our competition documents for 23-24. So starting now, if you navigate to the homepage of our site, you'll find an updated rules manual with some important new regulations and details, as well as a very good new case set for regional and divisional competitions this year. This season, you'll have a chance to think through intellectual property norms in the AI era, nuclear deterrence, the ethics of gift giving, and whether it's okay to harass woodland creatures in the new Legend of Zelda game. You'll learn a bit more about the cases shortly from some of their authors and editors, and I suspect many of you are already digging in as we speak. I'm sure I speak for the entire NHSEB editorial board that produced this case set when I say that I can't wait to see your reactions and your responses to the issues presented there. Next, I want to say a couple things about some changes we've made to our rules for 2023. This summer, the NHSEB Rules Council spent a couple of months making detailed revisions to our rules manual and considering some new regulations and policies. I want to thank them for their engagement and their dedication to continuing to kind of push the envelope on the structure of our activity. The chair of our Rules Council, Dr. Kyle Robertson, couldn't be here this afternoon, but in his stead, I'd like to announce a few key changes to our rules for 23-24 here. All of these things, of course, are spelled out in more detail in our rules manual, and you should feel welcome to reach out to us if you have questions or concerns. So first, the Rules Council has elected to return conferral times during matches to their pre-pandemic state, but to keep consistency across competition periods. All conferral times will now be up to 2 minutes rather than the previous 3 minutes. And of course, you'll see organizers and moderators implementing this change across all of our events this year. Next, we've changed the process for cutting a team off when their speaking time expires. Rather than haggling over whether it's finishing a sentence or finishing a thought, the Rules Council has now formalized a 10-second pause to allow teams to finish their remarks. Again, organizers and moderators will begin implementing this change across the country this year. A couple of other things, we've now decided to allow some slight variations in regional rules, procedures, and scoring with approval from the Rules Council. The Rules Council will consider those requests insofar as they're compatible with the spirit of the program. And of course, organizers will be required to report and communicate clearly any changes that they make to any rules or regulations. Finally, while it's the hope and expectation of our headquarters here in North Carolina that all teams will comply with rules as they're published, rule violations, whether intentional or otherwise, do occasionally occur. So the NHSEB Rules Council, for the purposes of guidance and clarity, has developed and approved new sanction procedures for implementation in 23 and 24. Beyond these quick updates, we're very excited to have you back this year, or perhaps joining us for the first time in some cases. We have a variety of programs and initiatives designed to help you prepare to participate in the Ethics Bowl activity, to learn more about our methods and procedures, and to build community around this thing that we all know and love. I'm going to pass things off to a few of my new colleagues who've recently been appointed to NHSEB's leadership team and advisory committees, starting first with NHSEB's new graduate student, Will Conwisher. So I'm going to pass things off to Will.
Hi, everyone. It's great to join all of you. My name, as Alex said, is Will Conwisher. I'm a doctoral candidate in the philosophy department at UNC Chapel Hill, and today I'm really excited to share a few developments with all of you related to our Academy and Bridge programs. First, we're very pleased to announce the relaunch of the NHSEB Academy site with some new and improved resources for both students and coaches. I think we all get the sense here at the headquarters that lots of the learning involved in the Ethics Bowl happens before the actual competition, and the Academy program has sort of been developed with that feature of the activity in mind. So in addition to print and online resources, teams can sign up for some one-on-one FaceTime with our NHSEB coaches over Zoom starting next week. And we'll also announce a full series of events in the NHSEB Academy Live series this fall. I'm really excited for those. We're also eager to release our new NHSEB 101 training coursework for volunteer judges and moderators. So our hope is that these resources will sort of reduce the organizational burden on our regional organizers and increase consistency across our different regional competitions. Also coming later this year is a completely new section of the NHSEB Academy site full of teaching materials designed to support teachers who want to integrate Ethics Bowl style learning and activities into their classrooms. And make sure to check the NHSEB Academy site throughout the season to keep up with the release of these resources. We think they'll be really useful, and we're very excited to see how people sort of put them to work in the classroom. Second, after some reworking last year, we've re-engineered the NHSEB Bridge initiative to do even more when it comes to making sure our activity is comprehensively available and accessible to students, regardless of where they live or go to school. In particular, we're going to continue to work in North Carolina and with partners around the country to bring Ethics Bowl into new communities who might not otherwise have access to the activity. We're excited to be doing this important work, and we look forward to keeping our community informed about it throughout the year. Also crucial to the NHSEB Bridge initiative has been collaboration with the NHSEB's new advisory special committee on equity, access, and community. And I'd like to turn things over from here to the chair of that committee, Kristen Foos-Wells, who's the executive director of the Association for Practical and Professional Ethics, or APPE, which hosts the Intercollegiate Ethics Bowl. And I actually began my history of interaction with the Ethics Bowl as an IEB student, so I'm very glad to see that there's still a close connection between these two organizations. Take it away, Kristen.
Thanks, Will. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. As Will alluded to earlier, the NHSEB remains committed to ensuring that the benefits of our program are available to as many high school students in the U.S. as possible through our NHSEB Bridge initiative. Sorry, all those letters get running together. Today, we have several exciting updates to share with all of you in this area. First, we're excited to announce that the NHSEB Bridge at Gravitas Regional Competition will once again provide an online regional home for students in states without official NHSEB regional competition. This program is made possible by a unique partnership with the Stony Brook School and will provide a wonderful introduction to the NHSEB program for teams who are new to the activity. More information about the NHSEB Bridge regional and registration information will soon be available at NHSEB/Bridge. Secondly, we're excited to announce some new investment by NHSEB into regional level outreach initiatives. In addition to standing resources to support fee waivers for teams in need and travel assistance to the national championship, I'm excited to share that we'll soon be launching a brand new micro grant program for regional and divisional organizers as part of the NHSEB Bridge initiative. These small grants, typically between about $100 and $1,000, are designed to provide support for crucial outreach initiatives among members of our community, including things like coaching assistance programs, team travel stipends, recruiting initiatives, advocacy materials, and training or recruiting events. More information is available on the NHSEB Bridge webpage, and applications will go live in mid-September at the newly rolled out NHSEB Organizer Hub. We're thrilled to provide these new opportunities to enhance our community's work, and we look forward to working with you all this season. To say a bit more about some upcoming community initiatives for students in particular, I'd like to hand things off to NHSEB's undergraduate assistant, Susanna King.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susanna, and I'm the NHSEB undergraduate program assistant for 2023 and 2024. I'm a third-year English and philosophy major at UNC, and I've been involved with the NHSEB since 2022. The NHSEB community has long asked for a gathering place beyond competitive events to connect over all things Ethics Bowl. Our first Student Advisory Council pushed hard for this idea, and the NHSEB Advisory Board and HQ staffers have been working on it for several months now. A few weeks ago, we were very excited to open NHSEB's official community on Discord to all program participants, students, alumni, coaches, organizers. As we launch our season today, we invite you to join us in building a constructive and fun online space that will be used by NHSEB participants for years to come. When you join the server for the first time, you'll get a chance to familiarize yourself with our community guidelines, and then a brief questionnaire will ensure that you're sorted into the right channels for your role and region. The channel's structure includes forums for structured discussion, running text and voice chat spaces for each role, channels for students to give feedback on their division or to their division's representative, on the Student Advisory Council, and more. So to get started, please name your profile, introduce yourself in the general forum, and have a look around. Feel free to message our community moderation team in the Ask NHSEB channel with any feedback or questions you have. And we really look forward to hearing from you and keeping in touch more generally with this exciting new venue. And speaking of the Student Advisory Council, it's my pleasure to introduce our two new appointments. So starting their 2-year terms this fall, Kaylin Bohm will be our Southeastern representative, and Haley Bhattacharya will be our Western representative. And I'm also pleased to announce that our Midwestern representative, Reem Kadmi-Scully, and our Northeastern representative, Grant Sheft, will return to finish out their appointments this year. So at this point, I'd like to pass things off to Dr. Alex Felt, who chairs the NHSEB's Case Advisory Committee, which works hard all summer to produce and edit the case set that you're likely all feverishly downloading.
Thank you, Susanna. I'd like to welcome everybody. I know this is an exciting time, and so it's really great to be able to be here and share this time with all of you. I'd want to start just first with great thanks to all of our contributors and writers. When I took over this role, one of the first things that I asked is, I don't have to write cases, because it's not an easy process. And to get the cases that we have, and sort of just the wonderful combination of topics and things to explore, really takes a lot of creative energy and thought and work from a great many people. And so thank you to all the writers who contributed, to those who had cases selected. We really appreciate that contribution. We have a couple of those individuals who are with us today, so we can talk a little bit about that. I want to reiterate what Alex said at the start. Cases are live and available, and so you can now access and download that full set. Additionally, students can start contributing cases for the competition on October 1st. So we always have a student case competition. There's an opportunity for students to contribute cases for us to consider. And so starting on October 1st, that is an option that is available for that. In addition to the writers, I'd like to thank my fellow committee members on the advisory board, as well as members of Alex's staff at the PAR Center for their work in the editorial process. It really is amazing how many people and how much work goes into this case set. And so it's really exciting to see it in its final form and released, so you are all ready to talk about it and engage with it for the year. And so with that, what I'd like to do is have a little bit of a conversation with some of our writers. And to start with, I'd like to have each of the writers that are with us just sort of briefly introduce themselves, tell us who you are, and also tell us where you first got your encounter with Ethics Bowl. What kind of got you connected with this activity that then maybe made you got interested in writing a case or something like that. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll kind of talk a little bit more about your cases and the ideas and the things that have come out of them. And so we'll go ahead and start with Bodhi, who is joining us from the Prindle Institute at DePauw University. And then we'll let Elijah and Katie introduce themselves. They're joining us from the University of North Carolina. And so Bodhi, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got connected with Ethics Bowl?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm a junior philosophy major right here at DePauw, where the Prindle is. And I got brought into Ethics Bowl about a year ago for Intercollegiate Ethics Bowl when our local team was kind of running short, and a professor found me and was like, "Hey, you want to try this out?" We were about a week to regionals, and so that was got a real crash course in the whole thing. But fell in love with it, and was doing summer work at the Prindle, and got the chance to start writing cases. And with the experience under my belt and all, I thought, why not give it a shot?
All right, thanks for joining us. Katie or Elijah, either one of you, feel free, jump in.
Katie, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie. I'm a graduate student at UNC in the School of Education, and I got involved in the PAR Center back in 2020. So began on Zoom and have stuck with it. As an undergraduate, participated in the fellow program, working with Alex and some of my peers that are on the Zoom today, and focusing on the Ethics Bowl behind the scenes was so exciting, and being able to write cases is such an exciting privilege that I'm just glad to be able to have contributed this year.
Certainly, I definitely reiterate everything Katie just said. Writing cases is delightful. My name is Elijah, by the way. I'm a junior at UNC. I study philosophy and math. I first became involved with the PAR Center and the National High School Ethics Bowl program a couple years back as a freshman. Just volunteering to help facilitate the national competition. I was very lucky to be able to be more involved with NHSEB last year, working with Alex over the course of the year, and I look forward to doing that some more this year through the PAR Center.
All right, so welcome to all three of you, and again, thank you for contributing. Thank you for giving us great cases to work with. So, what I'd be interested in hearing from you is, tell us a little bit about sort of the case or cases that you may have contributed, but also what kind of led you to write that case, or what was it that kind of sparked you to go, yeah, that's the one I want to put out there for us to talk about. So, and anybody want to kind of just jump in with a little bit of, what was that case and what got you going about that?
Sure, I'd love to take this question. I remember, obviously, everyone will get a chance to answer, but I have a few things I think I add. I think I have written 15 cases in the last year, 2 of which are in the regional set that just got published 20 minutes ago. So I can't say what led me to choose one, but I can definitely speak a little bit to the process of coming up with a case and what goes into that. So I found there's no one sort of canonical process to writing a case. They tend to have very eclectic origins. Sometimes you'll talk about an interesting subject in class, and that'll lead you down a rabbit hole, and you'll go start researching and writing about that. Sometimes you'll just have an interesting conversation with a friend, and you'll be talking about an issue over the course of hours or days or weeks, and that'll turn into a case. Sometimes it's in a personal experience or a story told to you by a friend, and that'll be turned into a case. Often it'll just come from reading the news, just like an interesting story, a human interest case, and that has a lot of interesting ethical implications, and that'll turn into a case. So I think there's a lot of different paths that can lead one to writing a case, and it's just sort of having an open and inquisitive mindset, because just going through life day to day, you are guaranteed to encounter interesting ethical dilemmas. And I think that just living one's life is the best resource for producing a case.
So Elijah, which are the 2 cases that...
Oh, my apologies. Yes. So I wrote up case 3, Till Death Do My Part, and case 4, Don't Bank on It. So the third, or the first was came through some class discussions, specifically relating to duties involved in the family, duties to those who are dying, And then the Don't Bank on It case that came from just kind of following the news.
Okay. Katie or Bodie, you want to jump in here with kind of what's the case that you contributed and what spurred you to write that?
Yeah, I can go ahead. My case was a national divorce, and it's about, well, specifically it's about like the Texan secession movements and kind of tensions surrounding that. But I mean, it came from my interest is mainly in political philosophy, so it was kind of a subject I wanted to try for. But I think Ethics Bowl is this really unique, like kind of like philosophical and like moral reasoning education opportunity, because it's got this competitive spirit, but this depth to it that forces you to it stops like armchair thinking about something and makes you really kind of indulge it. So stuff for, kind of hot button political issues, when they're adapted in Ethics Bowl cases, I think it gives especially like younger students a chance to really explore them and think about them in ways they might not otherwise.
Okay, Katie?
Yeah, Elijah and Bodhi have said a lot of things that I would agree with in describing my experience of case writing, especially what Elijah said about if you kind of look around, if you read, if you talk with friends, Ethics Bowl cases will come up. So I submitted a handful of cases, but Strike That, Revise It, I believe it's case number 9 on the set this year, is what I contributed. It deals with Roald Dahl and different versions of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And essentially what version of a book should you include in a classroom? The inspiration from that was actually, I think, a conversation with Alex that I might have had a few months ago. But the lens that I took was, instead of making it a regular old socio-political case where you explain the scenario and a few sides of it, I tried to give it through the lens of a student. Because I think when students can connect to the content of a case, on a more personal level, it feels more exciting, more urgent. And that was kind of the hope with the case I contributed.
Yeah, thanks for that. And what I want to highlight actually is what I think is interesting about sort of the 4 cases that just got mentioned is we've kind of got a nice coverage there of sort of in the news, historical event. We've got the more sort of personal experience that you might have had, kind of the fictionalized case that still gets us thinking about family and interactions. And it really shows us some of that big diversity of how there's lots of different ways that sometimes we're asking similar questions or looking at certain values. So what I'm going to ask you next is we're going to throw a bonus out there to anybody who's watching. And so I want you to think about sort of your topic, your case that you've contributed. And Elijah, you can either go for both or pick one of them. It's how generous are you feeling towards the teams that are out there? Because what I want you to tell us is what is sort of something that you think is the most challenging about your case, about what you've contributed. What's the thing that you think, I think that's where they might either miss something or I think they're going to kind of maybe get stuck on that. And then what advice would you give for that type of thing? So any of you, I know I'm throwing this at you right now, so you kind of have to do that. Okay, what is that thing? But in any of those cases, can you think of that one thing where you're like, oh, I don't know if they're going to get that, or maybe you yourself are still kind of really stuck on, I don't know what I would say about this aspect of it.
This is a great question. I have sort of a general response, as I guess nothing specifically comes to mind. I don't really want to give too many people like an upper hand, but I think one thing that's really helpful in ethics bowl practice is doing like perspective switching and a roundtable discussion. So going around the room in a classroom, whether you have like only 2 other people discussing cases with you or 20, which that would be really cool. Going in the room, seeing what everyone's initial reactions are to a case, writing them all down, circling maybe where they all overlap, which views only one person has, and really focusing on the things that only a few people thought to notice that other people didn't. Those are specific things that the judges might really latch onto. So hearing everyone's voice is not only a great way to include everyone in the activity, it's actually quite vital to figuring out the nuances of it. So I'd certainly recommend a roundtable discussion.
I think that's great advice for the teams. Like that, just letting kind of it flow and getting those different ideas out there can be a really good starting point. And any other either thoughts about that or thinking about a specific thing about your case that you think, that's the moment, that might be the thing. And again, we don't have to necessarily solve it or answer it, because we want them to, we want everybody else to think about it. But anything that pops into mind?
I mean, totally agree with what Katie had to say about bringing everyone's perspective in. That's how you find interesting solutions. I think with my case in particular, kind of the more heady bit of it is having to think about like the role of the state and, you know, what is the ideal state? What are its responsibilities? Which I think are problems we all kind of tackle like in the day-to-day. We kind of have our boxed answers for them, and having to really think about that and kind of deal with an opposition that we might not normally invite into these discussions, I think will definitely be a challenge, but you know, keep an open mind and keep exploring odd concepts.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say sort of reiterating Bodhi's point. I think one sort of challenge with political cases is they often run the risk of you get a sort of tunnel vision. Like some cases pretty easily map on to a contemporary political divide, or at least they seem to be. Often they're a lot more complex than they first seem, but it can be very easy to have like first reaction that goes unchallenged. And I'd say that might be like a concern, both with Don't Think on It, my case, as well as with Bodhi's about national divorce. It seems like one concern or one potential problem I'd hazard against is like letting sort of like first instincts get in the way of investigating the sorts of principles behind what might be motivating various positions.
Yeah, and I think that actually tails really nicely with where Katie, where you kind of started with that advice of trying to get those different perspectives in, because that can sometimes help us get away from, okay, I came in with this and this is where I'm at, and it can kind of maybe open up some of that. You know, one thing that I was thinking about, you know, with these particular cases is actually, Elijah, your case, the till death do my part, where right the case is fundamentally about relationships, and it's specifically in that case focusing on a marriage as a relationship, and you know how we might think of certain obligations within that. And I was thinking about how in my classroom, you know, I have these, you know, college students that are coming in, and I'll use certain examples in my bioethics classroom where I'm like talking about my wife and I, and because we live together and share our lives in a certain way. And sometimes it doesn't resonate because, right, it's a different phase of life. And I think that can be another kind of challenge sometimes, is it's about that perspective and thinking about, okay, I've had this experience, but I need to try to imagine, right, that creativity that can come out sometimes in how we explore and how we think about these types of things. And so I thought that's another thing I thought was interesting about the mix of cases. We've got kind of the political ones that can sometimes have their own, you know, risks in how we examine them. Then we've got the ones where they're more about the lives that we inhabit. And Katie, you had that nice example of that might be an experience students have already had. And then we've got this other case where it's talking about experiences you might have in the future, but you can still think about your own relationships that you've had and how that might intersect and create difficulties. So what else might be interesting to think about? I don't know if you all have really had a chance to look over the full set. But if you just think about either cases you've seen both in the current set and in the past, is there one that's kind of to you has been like, that was a really good one, I loved that one, And if so, like, what about it? What kind of makes that still be that one that stands out for you? And if it's from this set already, we'd love to hear it, because I'll be curious if the students this season are going to have that same type of, that's the one, that's it.
Sure, I can say a little bit about this. So I'll say a couple things. So myself, Susanna, Katie, we all love Forget Me Not. This was a case from the regional set, I believe, last year. We just think it's delightful. One of the things I really love about Forget Me Not, in particular, is it's a case that I've seen discussed about a dozen times, and every conversation is different. I'll also say, Katie, Susanna, and myself, we were part of the team that judges the student case competition. And this is definitely something I see as uniquely valuable, like something that'll make a really great case, is if you can imagine like many different lines of conversation, because this is a very hard thing to do. It's not something you can see with every case. Sometimes cases can, the conversations can be a little bit predictable. Definitely, I'd say like the very, very best cases, such as Forget Me Not. Also, I believe the pairing of separate but ethical and parental controls, that was, I believe, the regional semifinals. That was an excellent pairing. Both those cases I had discussed with friends for hours and hours. There are a good number of really great cases, but I think, in my opinion, what really makes like the best cases really stand out is they're kind of inexhaustible. Everyone's going to come at it with a sort of different perspective, with new insights. And I think, in my mind, that these three are really great exemplars of cases that you can never really reach the bottom of.
And I'll just say that from the perspective of, our case committee, as we're looking at cases and think about, that's also something that, like, we were talking about a lot, is we'd look at certain cases and go, man, like, there's so many avenues, and it seems like every time people talk about it, they're probably going to find different roads for it. And I think that's the thing I love about, hearing how we're trying to promote pedagogy and using these in the classroom, because not only are they great for competition and great for students to talk about, they get to have that kind of life, because they're that great example of like why moral deliberation is also hard, but why it's really meaningful and valuable, because you feel like you're doing something important when you're able to kind of work through those types of things. Katie or Bodhi, any cases that kind of jump out to you that you've really liked in the past, or sort of topics?
I would definitely reiterate Forget Me Not, that I think probably unparalleled excitement that we had in the undergraduate fellowship about discussing that. But in addition, some of the older cases that I've really enjoyed reading about but haven't seen discussed, I believe Man Search for Meaning in the 2017 national set. And I don't remember which set this one is, but gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but an interpersonal case where students at a lunch table are discussing the like validity of a joke, and if it's moral hazard, or if it's just a joke, hang up what the case is called. But I love the interpersonal ones, and the Man Search for Meaning one that I mentioned earlier is in the wider context of a significant historical moment, but it's a specific personal lens on it. And my favorite ones are the ones where maybe a student could imagine it in a more urgent, interpersonal is the only word I can come up with.
Yeah,
but
this is also a great opportunity to plug the fact that we've got a great case library, right? That we can always go back to our cases. We can bring them back out, whether it's a team at practice and you just want something new to think about. That might help you, again, shine new light on current cases when you think about these old conversations for the classroom and for other spaces. And right, that library has been completely kind of reworked, it's searchable, right? And we're wanting it to foster these exact types of things where when we go, oh, that one, I can't remember the title of it, I can't remember what year, I can still go find it. I can get that in there and have that conversation. And so don't forget that we have that as a great resource. And the team at the PAR Center has done a great job in working on that, re-archiving it. In fact, I believe, Katie, you did a bunch of that or at least Alex is leading me to believe that. And so if that's not the case, we could talk about the moral hazard that just got created by, Alex making me tell things that aren't true. But we appreciate the work on that, and we just want to remind everybody of that great resource that exists. Bodhi, what about you? Any past cases or things given your past involvement with Ethics Bowl?
Yeah, just to pull something from the current case set, I think intellectual property unplugged is I think it's a really good example of like what Ethics Bowl is good for. Like I was saying, it's kind of an educational thing. Taking this issue we hear in the news, we have varying levels of familiarity with. You can't really fully cut through like, how should I feel about this? What does this spell for society or me individually? And putting that pretty soberly down in a way that can be discussed and hopefully doesn't just make for a good competition, but like teams walk away from having actually like thought about something in the world and come to grasp with it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of a case, right? Because we've got the really recent development that's making us go, we've got to think about new things. And then we've got other cases that are making us revisit things that we've thought about for decades, right? And so we've got the case about doomsday deterrence, and that's something that has been tackled with over and over, and now we're yet again thinking about it. And it's a good reminder of how I think these conversations just kind of they circle back, and we find new perspectives and new ways to think about them, and hopefully it helps us move forward in how we come to understand the world around us and live and work together. What I just want to do is I want to give each of you an opportunity. Is there anything else that you would offer, either as advice to those competing, just encouragement, anything that you would kind of give now that we've got the day, we've got the cases, we've seen it, we're kind of sitting there going, man, if only I could be back doing that, right? I mean, every now and then I teach a large lecture class, and the way it works is at the end of the week, they go with their TAs in the small discussions. And I always tell my TAs I'm jealous because they get to do the fun stuff. They get to talk about it. They get to engage with it. And I always feel like it's just, here's the cases, go do the fun stuff. So like any last kind of encouragement, thoughts, anything that you would give to our students and our teams that are going to be, or even teachers, right? The coaches, those that are working with them. Any last things that you would leave them with as they get ready to explore this new world we've given them of 16 wonderful cases?
Sure, I can say a little bit, get the ball rolling. I'd say kind of what I was alluding to earlier, like when you first look at these cases, it can be easy to make sort of snappy judgments. Tony is right, John is wrong, these kinds of like sweeping claims. And I think like just the best advice I could really give when handling a case is just to keep questioning your own positions. Even if you don't budge in the slightest bit from today till 6-8 months from now, those are gonna be the questions that judges ask. Those are gonna be the questions that other teams ask. And having thought through each of these cases from a wide variety of angles it's gonna be your best weapon when competition time comes. Having really dug into these cases, figuring out what are the sort of basic principles, what's most important to you when evaluating these cases.
Yeah, that's great advice. And anything, Katie, Bodhi, that you want to add to that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great advice, Elijah. I think to add on to this is a really specific piece of advice, but it's one that I think, at least for me, when I look at the case is really helpful, is to consider what the normative and what the descriptive parts of the case are. So descriptive meaning like, I don't know, that chair is blue, descriptive chair is blue. Normative, this is a weird example, but like what ethical implications might the color of the chair have? not getting caught up in maybe the really fun but distracting details of the case. It's important to keep that separate from like, what is the urgent ethical dilemma? What is morally significant? Maybe even like writing out all of the things that jump out at you as a student, and then separating normative and descriptive. That can be really useful.
I think I'll be a bit cheesy with it and echo Alex. Have fun with it. It's very easy to get tied up in the competition of it. But this is a wonderful introduction to philosophy. It's really outside of university or academic setting, getting to wrestle with these problems and enjoy playing with moral tension. So throughout the whole thing, just enjoy the process.
Wonderful. I think that's a great note for us to kind of end on. Again, I'd like to thank Bodhi, Elijah, and Katie, not just for joining us for this great conversation, but for contributing, giving us some of these great cases to work with. As someone who was involved in that editorial process, again, I really appreciate it because it meant I didn't have to try to write cases. I just had to instead look at all the wonderful cases and then try to figure out which ones to go with. And so we really appreciate what you've done. Before I turn it back to Alex to kind of wrap us up, again, I just want to reiterate that students, it'll be open back up to where you can contribute cases starting on October 1st, and that the current case set is live and available. And the other thing that I do want to note about that is that with the new regional and divisional structure, you will also notice in the case set that we've marked certain cases as the cases that would potentially be used in that divisional round. And so we're kind of also trying to set those out to give some of those spaces to explore. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Alex Richardson to take this home.
All right. Thanks, Alex. And thanks, of course, to our writers for a great conversation, I think, to kick us off for the year. And of course, thanks to all of our audience at home for joining us this afternoon, and of course, for your support of our activity. From here, I'll just close things out by reminding all of our community members that you can always direct questions or concerns that you have to our team at HQ by emailing us at ethicsbowl@unc.edu. Otherwise, we're excited to get things started this year, and we'll be happy to assist you with anything that you might need. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful evening. I wish you the happiest ethics bowling, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks, everyone.